Hello, hello. Welcome to tonight's live stream, Pixologic live stream, and we're going to continue with bees tonight because I'm in the mood for bees. And tonight's live stream is brought to you by wine. Wine for when you forget to buy beer. All right, so let's get to it. I think I'm going to work on the thorax a bit. So I have my reference here. Let me shrink this down a little bit. And this is going to require some looking at diagrams because pictures are too fuzzy. And by fuzzy, I mean literally like fuzzy. Kind of hard to see the details there. So I'm going to rely on some diagrams to kind of bring out some of the sutures here. This is a pretty nice diagram, and this one has the pieces separated. We can see a little bit of the inside here. So the thorax, of course, is this part right here, which is where both the wings and the legs come out, or are attached. The abdomen back here is where you find most of the internal organs. So the thorax is filled with muscles. This is where you're going to find the stomach and the stinger and other parts like that. You can see that's going to require some work because right now it's just a bunch of pieces. And as I mentioned last week, this was created based on scan data. So just briefly take a look at the scan data here that I used to begin with. So you can see that's what that looks like. It even has some of the fuzz still on it. Very high quality scan. So that's what I'm using for my reference. And let's go over here and I'm going to put on the solo button and just take a look at the side. Make sure that we have symmetry turned on. Yep. So you can see, I mean, I spent a lot of time cleaning this up just to get rid of all the schmutz and the noise and the hair, and this is what I'm left with. So now it's been a bit simplified. And let me see, it is 3 subdivision levels, highest subdivision level is about 82,000, so let's subdivide it a few more times, get up to about 1.3 million. What's up, Marcelo and Eileen? Eileen Muhammad. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize if I'm not. So what we have here is this piece that kind of looks like, kind of see hints of it here. We could actually separate this into its own segment if we wanted to, if we really wanted to get technical. Or a segment or a geometry, just the top of it. But I think right now I'm just going to kind of draw these in here and make sure that I got it right before I do anything like that. This part came out pretty nicely. I feel like this should come out. This is like the point where he's like, do I pay more attention to the scan data or to the illustration? I think I should defer mostly to the scan data, but in cleaning up the scan data, I kind of lost a lot of that detail, so I want to make sure that I'm getting this right. I was having an interesting discussion with my lovely partner Irene the other day. We were talking about sort of the benefits or the differences between making stuff up, in other words, concept art in ZBrush, which is always fun, and trying to make something that is accurate. They both have their benefits. You know, making stuff up is always going to be more fun, I think. That is almost always the case. Let me bring down the Z intensity on this. But it's also a little bit easier because, well, I can't really make any mistakes. People can critique you on the choices that you've made in terms of the design. But at the end of the day, you're playing God, so you can do whatever you want, which is fun, but also I think a little bit less challenging. I think it's more challenging to try and do something and achieve accuracy. It's kind of like the difference between making up a character and doing a likeness of like a famous person. I think for me, doing a likeness is definitely harder because you really had to pay attention to the tiniest of details in order to get, and the likeness correct. And it's very easy to tell if you have a likeness correct or not, because all you have to do is show it to somebody and ask them who it is that you've made. And if they can't figure it out, then you have not succeeded. This interesting piece right here I'm using as a guide, this right here. Actually, that is not part of that, it's this right here. So this right here should be a separate part. So maybe what I'll do is let's separate that from the rest of the thorax. So I'm going to fill this in a little bit. And then the other thing, like I said before, like when you're doing an insect or anything that's non-mammalian, you're going to have a harder time finding good reference. And if you were working off of diagrams like I am right now, then you're inheriting all the mistakes and the biases of the person who made the illustration in the first place. And I suspect this illustration is probably quite old, probably from Karl von Frisch's, I can't pronounce his name, German scientist who won the Nobel Prize for his bee research. He's the guy who interpreted the honeybee dance. It's interesting, when they research bees, at least they did in the old days in the 20th century, early part of the 20th century, they, one of the ways to do this is like, how do you track bees in the wild, right? Can't exactly follow them along. So what they would have to do is take a bee from a beehive and basically put little colored balls of wax on them, on their thorax, right, to identify the different bees or which hive they're from, and then basically like sit there in a chair. Different scientists would have to sit, let's say in the neighborhood, in a chair or just in the wild, and just spend all day trying to find the bees with the different colored wax on them. I mean, bees are delightfully predictable, right? They go to the same flowers for the most part, and they definitely come back to the same hive. So you have some predictability there, which is nice. But at the same time, imagine spending days, weeks, months just sitting and cataloging when a particular bee shows up and where they go. But they learned a lot from how bees communicate to how they specialize particular flowers. Like if you're in a honeybee hive and you're a worker, you're probably going to specialize in a particular flower. Like you're going to be the lavender person, or you're going to be the lavender bee, or the rose bee, or the sunflower bee, or something like that, which is very interesting. And from what I've read, and I believe this is true, you pretty much specialize in that one flower for the rest of your bee life. I have some really nice cactuses in my backyard, and when they bloom, it's really spectacular. But man, they attract a lot of bees. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. Yeah, good reference seeking. Yeah, that's I have been lax in my macro photography practice, but I used to do a lot of that, and that's one of the best ways, especially if you go out in the field with scientists who know stuff about a particular insect, then you can ask questions. I was extremely fortunate in that many years ago I got to hang out with Thomas Shahan. Actually, I've been on a few trips with him. He's one of the world's leading experts in jumping spiders and a delightful human being. But it's really fun to see him out in the wild, getting pictures of jumping spiders. I actually found a Phidippus audax in my backyard. Actually, I should say Irene found it, not me, on one of the cactuses. Huge, biggest one I've ever seen here in California just the other day, about as big as my thumb. It's really amazing. They're the ones that are mostly black, but they have these bright green chelicerae. So this is where things are going to get tough, because you just see a little schmutz of a reference there. I don't know exactly what this is, if this is attached to this piece or not. Let's pretend for the sake of argument that can't really tell. So I'm going to keep this as its own thing. So let's go down to the lowest subdivision level. And I'm going to use this mask. Do Control W. Let's see. Here we go. That came out pretty well. It is its own polygroup. And now what I'm going to do is Control Shift click on this. Let's clear any masks. And I'm going to do split hidden. So that's going to separate that from the rest of the thorax. Turn off the solo button so you can see now. Of course, what I've done is create a situation which I have a giant hole in there, so I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the highest subdivision level here, and I'm going to control click on my history here. So I'm storing this state in history. I'm going to go down to lowest subdivision level and delete higher and close holes. So we get this, and let's see, I'm going to let's see if I do a ZBrush the same. That's not too bad. Let's move this out a little bit. Subdivide. Back up to 1.12 million, and then go down here to subtool and project history. There we go. So we're back to where we were, but now I have that piece separated out. Just move this out a little bit. Yeah, so we have, did I already do this? I might have done this already in an earlier version. Aha! Well, so much for that. Yeah, I think I already did it in an earlier version. This is a problem with like going back to models you haven't worked on in a long time. Oh well. Well, at least I got it off the thorax there. Let's go take a look at my scan data real quick. Yeah. So this piece right here. Okay. Oh well, at least I got to demonstrate how I did that. I'm going to kind of dig into this a little bit. Just get rid of this. I feel like that should be bigger though. Make this a little bit bigger. Whoops. Forgot to turn on Symmetry. Well, that wine is going straight to my head. There we go. Back to SK cloth, and let's take a look at some of these separations here. So this right here, okay. So this right here is this piece right here. We have this little tab type deal, and then it goes down under here. If we take a look from above, it looks like this. So let's look at it from the side. And we end up with something that has a line right here. And kind of like a suture right there. And let's pull this out a little bit. I think this tucks underneath this part, so I'm going to clay tubes and kind of imply that. Probably getting ahead of myself. Let's define the rest of the shape first. Did a little bit of work on the opening title sequence for The Beekeeper, which was, I believe, a Jason Statham film. In other words, an action film from my friends at Filmograph. All I really did was provide them with some bee models that I had made and rigged. And they used them a very short segment of the opening animation. Most of the opening titles is actually live footage. But I was working with my friend Lee Nelson, who is a good friend of mine and a really great motion graphics artist and a good friend and cool guy. But man, he kept calling them flies. It was driving me crazy. We're working on a movie called Beekeeper, and I'm giving him models that are bees, and it says bees all over the file. He kept calling them flies. He's like, we gotta change the way that these flies move. It's like, not freaking flies, they're bees. And then I'm hanging out with him at a party, and I meet his lovely girlfriend. Turns out she's an entomologist, like a real one, not a pretend entomologist like me, like an actual trained entomologist. And she is with this guy who insists on calling bees flies. I don't know how she does it. I was telling her the story, and she's like, yep, I totally believe it. That's what I gotta deal with on a regular basis. Confusing a bee with a fly to me is like up there with confusing. It's like confusing a walrus with a horse. They're so incredibly different. Except for, bee mimicking flies, which look a lot like bees, but they're actually flies. It's really hysterical how often you'll see, especially on social media, somebody will post a picture of a bee mimicking fly, and they say, look at this bee. It's like, come on, man, check out the antenna. Look at the antenna. Look at the number of wings. Pretty obvious that that is a fly. Funny thing is, I know many more fly specialists than I know bee specialists. I know at least 3 of my friends who are fly scientists. The Natural History Museum: Emily Hartop, Lisa Gonzalez, and Brian Brown. What's cool about this illustration is the little, the hash marks or the cross hatching here kind of gives a nice clues to the shape of these things. It looks like it's implying sort of an indentation there, so I'm going to do this. And then I think I'm going to leave that piece alone for a little bit. It's looking pretty good. A really great piece of advice that I got from Thomas Wittelsbach, who also does live streams. He's a jewelry guy. Is you always have to make sure that it's obvious what's in front of what. It seems like a really obvious thing to say, but when you're working with complex shapes like these insects and stuff like that, it can get very easy to get lost in the weeds and then not make it obvious what is in front of the other thing. Unless you're like MC Escher or something like that. And the whole point is to confuse it. But whenever you start to get lost in a design, just remind yourself to make sure it's obvious what's in front of the other thing. So this needs to be in front of this. So what we can do is just to bring this point home, do a little bit of a mask here. Whoops. And then use Move Brush just to push it down a little bit more. I don't want that to be too pointy. I want it to be slightly rounded. I know I get lost in some of these details, but that's the whole fun of it, you know. Okay, it looks like we have another. This right here looks like it's part of this. Just defining this, then I'm going to come back and refine it a little bit. Makes me want to design spaceships or suits of armor, or both. I actually did do a kind of a fun shuttle design a few years ago, quite a few years ago. It was based on a beetle. I had to dig that up and finish that model. It's really kind of fun. Believe it or not, every once in a while I do things that are not insects. They're often insect inspired. I think what I want to do, whoops, my arm keeps hitting the number pad, plus sign and the number pad, so zoom out. I'm going to mask this real quick. Alright, so I'm going to have this come out forward there. Hey Gabriel, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us. If you're just tuning in, believe it or not, this is a bee. Honeybee worker. The thorax. I'm not sure what's going on here, but right now I'm just going to kind of dig in right here until I can figure out what's going on there. And then the other thing I'm going to do is let's go down a few levels of subdivision and maybe just can't imagine what it's like to draw these original illustrations, considering just had like probably a light microscope, an old style light microscope, and some pens. going to take the head and move it forward because it's too close to the body. So let's create a folder if I haven't already. Make sure that the ocelli are inside of there. Let's rename this. Somebody got really upset that I was pronouncing it ocelli as opposed to ocelli. I think it's an Italian guy. Sent me a nasty message on YouTube because he's really upset about it. But apparently I talked to entomologists and they all say ocelli, so that's what I'm calling it. Because I listen to entomologists for all my advice, whether it's financial, spiritual. When in doubt, ask a bug expert. Psychological, hygiene. Yeah, I know this takes way too long to autosave. I'm going to turn off the autosave in a second. Let's do this. Preferences. Okay. Let's try that again. I'm going to define some information on more information on how the actual neck and the head meet, because this is a little bit hard to tell. It's like this might be on the inside of the head right here. All right. Let's save this real quick. There's a bunch of models in this project, so it's going to be a little bit slow in saving. And I think I'm using, this is on an older style hard drive. Yeah, so if somebody applies for a job like insect scan cleaning up for a research or a museum, please let me know because I will be the first one to apply. Unfortunately, no, I get these jobs through freelance, so that's why I'm doing freelancing between scientific stuff and Hollywood stuff. If I could get just a regular gig just doing this kind of thing all day long, I would do it happily. But unfortunately, so far, museums are just starting to figure out now that this is an interesting idea. And the problem is they tend to not have a whole lot of budget for full-time staff that can do this kind of thing. So what they do is they hire out companies that do this, and the companies hire people like me. So for example, when I did this stuff, worked on the exhibit for the Western Australia Museum, that was through a company called CDM. And they're in Australia, I'm here in Los Angeles, and they do all kinds of stuff. They do museum stuff, but they also do amusement park rides and parks and other types of things, and they have a wide variety of skills that they do. It would be very cool. I mean, and the other thing is a lot of museums, like when I did the fly scans for the group in the museum in Germany, in Berlin, that was through a grant that Emily Hartop actually applied for. And it was for, 10 flies. So if it turns into a full-time gig, that would be awesome. I'd love to be able to do that. But right now, there's probably a few people in the world who are doing it, but you probably count them on a single hand. I could be wrong about that, but the insect scans that I got, of course, came from Thomas Vanderkamp, who does have a synchrotron. So I've got my scan data from him, and then CDM also provided me scan data that they got from their client. So I'm not doing the actual scans myself. Okay, let's take a look at this. This is a little tough because I'm not seeing this so much. This might be part of this right here. Let's consult the scan data. Yeah, so as I sculpt my insect, you can see, okay, this is cool. I can kind of see this right here. I can have a tendency to get further and further away. So what I will do is I'm going to choose a view like this and then just do that. Right, so this is actually just a chunk of the model. DIY synchrotron. I think you can make one using aluminum pans, a flashlight from the hardware store, a magnifying glass, and a TRS-80. So what I'm going to do right here is, whoops, let's get that view again. I'm going to do Shift S, and that drops the model to the canvas. So now what I can do is I could use that as like 3D reference in the background, and then go back to my model. And that's why it's a great idea to keep the scan data as a subtool, because now I can see these parts right here, and I don't necessarily get lost while I'm working. It's very easy to start inventing things, especially when you're kind of talking and messing around. I have done it in a situation where I started sculpting and got carried away, and then I think I did it last week on my live stream, and then after about a half an hour I look at my original scan data or my reference, I'm like, wow, I'm way off because I got goofy. Okay, I think this looks like I can build it up a little bit. And it's interesting though, because it's like, stuff like scan data scan hardware is getting cheaper and cheaper. I'm not saying that synchrotron is something that you can throw together, but when I was working at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute a long time ago, that's how I got started. That was 1998, early 2000s, and that was a time when the National Institute of Health here in the United States was doing the government was doing the Human Genome Project along with Eric Lander and the Whitehead Institute. So they were trying to sequence the human genome, and of course they spent billions and billions of dollars and many years doing it until they finally had a sequence, using all kinds of crazy equipment to do it. Now you can literally get a device that will allow you to sequence a genome in the field, like practically like a handheld device. Like It's absolutely crazy. I know some scientists who are actually working on this, and they take them in the field to sequence the genome of a flower or something like that. It just goes to show how quickly the technology, once you have a breakthrough, how quickly it evolves to the point where it's cheap and accessible. So who knows? You know, scanning devices get better and better every year. So maybe we'll get to the point where we can actually scan insects at home in your spare time. Okay, so I'm going to do this real quick. Okay, hopefully I'm not going to invent too much here, but it looks like here's a good example of what's in front of what. This looks like it's in front of this, but up here kind of looks like it overlaps. I'm going to do it like this. What's the worst that could happen, right? I'm going to do this. Control N to get rid of that blob. Go back to my scan data. Control Shift to bring the whole thing back. There we go. That's nice. Let's do this. Look at that. 3D scan data. I love it. Now I can clearly see what's going on there. I'm going to do this. Shift S, that drops it to the canvas. Switch back to my thorax. And I can see this right here, which I think is this part right here. This is the other problem. Like, I started this model last year, and then I keep going back to it and forgetting what I did on it, which I think is kind of an interesting way to learn. Control N, clear the canvas, go back to this. Let's see what's going on over here. This is almost like more useful than the illustration. So I'm going to move the illustration off to the side. Spent a whole year making a, sorry, it's very small here, Arduino focus stack trail for macro photography a while back. By the time I had it working, a new camera had that feature built in. Yeah, I believe it. That's why I dabbled in writing scripts for a while back, but I was so slow. Scripts meaning like Mel scripts and that kind of stuff. I was so slow that by the time I got something working, either a script already existed or I built it into the new feature of the software, and I'm like, I stink at programming anyways. Okay, so let's see. So looks like we have this kind of defined by right there. So we've got another suture coming down. Yeah, this is quite the puzzle. Yeah, I see how many things I've gotten, let's say, incorrect to be generous. This right here seems a bit wider than what I have right here. So, as my friend used to say, wrong is wrong, so we gotta fix it. I think that was relying too heavily on the illustration there. Can also go in here, move. Looks like so another thing we can try here real quick. Okay, I'll do Control N and turn off everything with this in the scan data. And then let's do this. I'll just hide parts of this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this guy. I'm going to store a morph target, and then I'm going to use the ZBrush just to dial this in a little bit, just so I can get the sutures in the right place, because I feel like they've gotten a little bit out of whack here. So I'm using the ZBrush just to project in the local area. When you're using the Z project brush, you gotta remember, well, first of all, let me undo this. I should turn off symmetry. First thing I was gonna say is make sure you have symmetry off before you do this, because it does not play nice with symmetry. So undo all that. Now turn symmetry off, and let's lower the Z intensity and just do this. Thank you. That's too much. Too much, too much, too much. Okay, now I can see a little bit better. I know that we have a line right here. Just trying to create some landmarks for myself so that as I edit this, I can get as close as possible. Yes, I am very lucky to have the scan data. You can, go to places like Sketchfab and get very mediocre scan data, which is okay for practicing if I know it's not your first time doing this, but for other people, if it's their first time trying to model insect, that's not a bad way to start. But the other thing though is more and more of this stuff is going to come online as more and more labs scan insects. Our friend Thomas Vanderkamp, of course, is creating a system where they can start creating lots and lots of scan data very quickly. Maybe that'll translate into more museum jobs for those of us who would love to clean up insect scan data all day. So you never know. So I'll fix the symmetry. What I can do to fix the symmetry is this. So, that's kind of like an optimistic thing to think of, because he's, developing or working with people developing the software that's hopefully will churn this stuff out quickly. And considering there's hundreds and thousands of species of insects in the world, should keep us busy for a little while. Go down to deformation and let me see, we determined I had this on the y-axis for some reason because I'm an idiot. Let's see. There we go. So that's smart resim. So it copied these details over here. In fact, if I do Control Z, you can see that's what it was before, and there it is after. I'm going to clear the mask and turn symmetry back on. And now continue to sculpt. Let's save. See if I can remember what the website is. I can't pronounce that. Biomedisa. Free and easy to use open source application for the segmenting large 3D volumetric images such as CT scans. So, if you got the scan data, but not a 3D model, this will take your slices and make it a lot faster to actually create a 3D model. some cool stuff on here. So look, a bee brain. So this is, I think, going to be the future for scanning bugs. And so the website is Biomedisa Info. So check that out. At the very least, you can sort of learn the future of working with insect scan data. I know that was used in creation of this particular scan from the images, the slices, of course. So it makes it much more faster and much more accurate, because I guess if you have like 600 slices, you can choose one beginning part, like say 1, and then 50, and then 150 or something like that, and then it'll interpret between them, is what I understand. That's a super simplified version of it. Okay, so now that I have this, let's go back to the scan data. I'm just trying to pick a size that'll work for me, and Shift S. Go back to the thorax. Now we can, that's great. That works really well. Much easier than trying to work off of an illustration. This is, I mean, obviously this is a ZBrush live stream if you hadn't noticed, so I'm going to talk about how great ZBrush is. That's kind of why I do it. But I did play a little bit with the other application, the Blender. It's got some cool tools in it, but still there's so much in ZBrush that makes this kind of stuff much easier, like this whole, like being able to drop this to the canvas like that, and then working with this really high poly data pretty easily. That's the kind of stuff I really appreciate with ZBrush. Makes this such an amazing application. So I think this right here is going to be our wing muscle. So what I'm going to do here is, now I'm just going to do a good old-fashioned project, but just in a very localized area. So I'm going to invert the mask. And then let's do a project all, just to see what happens. Everything will probably blow up. Yeah, everything blew up. A little too insane. So let's try this. Let's do a project all, but let's make the distance really, really, really small. Too small. 0.00. That's a little bit better. I love it. It's awesome. So I was gonna make a recommendation to you all for if you're like me and you spend a lot of time working and you throw on something like YouTube in the background while you work. I've been watching Adam Savage's awesome YouTube channel, Tested. If you're a huge Mythbusters fan like me, I only started recently watching this. I'm sure some of you all probably known about it for a while. I'm just getting into it now. But what an amazing YouTube channel, just for everything from great advice on, great stories about Mythbusters, behind the scenes, great interesting philosophical conversations, also really great advice, career advice for freelancers and makers and fabricators of all sorts, including what we do, on stuff like how to get paid, how to deal with difficult clients, how to deal with clients when the project goes wrong, how to get clients to pay you, all kinds of really awesome advice. I highly recommend it. It's called Tested. I've been really kind of enjoying it this week, and probably watch a lot more. It's been going on for a few years now, so like I said, some of y'all probably know about this already. I miss Mythbusters greatly. It's such a fantastic show. I'm surprised to hear that they got nominated, but they did not win an Emmy. I cannot believe that. It's criminal. One of the people on the show is a guy named Grant Imahara, if you ever watched Mythbusters. And he was amazing. He was an ILM engineer, worked on in the Star Wars films, the prequels. He didn't write them, so don't blame him for that. But just an amazing, and one of the most amazing Mythbusters, because he had such a great personality and a really great problem solver. Is really great with math. And you notice I'm talking about it in the past tense because unfortunately he died quite suddenly and unexpectedly of a brain aneurysm, which happens more often than you think. It's really, really sad that he died like that. But I have a friend of mine who works in the visual effects industry, who's also a CG artist, and his name is Billy Brooks, and he's a good friend of mine. I worked with him when I worked at Otoy a few years ago. Otoy makes Octane, which is a rendering system, GPU-based rendering system. Anyway, so I used to work with Billy, and Billy was good friends with Grant. He would tell me stories about Grant Imahara. Apparently they were in a club in San Francisco, and this club was devoted to making life-size realistic R2 units. Mostly R2 units, but other Star Wars droids. But and Billy made an R2-D2. Billy has actually worked on R2-D2 in episode 2, I believe. The little jets that R2-D2 pop out of his legs and they allow him to fly, which he used in that movie and then never used again and forgot about, I guess, in Star Wars. Those are called the Brooks jets because Billy designed them, CG designed them. So Billy definitely has his Star Wars cred. He works on Doctor Who right now. He's in London, really good friend. But he told me stories about working in the club with Grant and how they'd all get together and, there'd be like dozens of these guys and gals working on R2 units. He'd show me pictures. But they would take weeks and weeks and weeks to make a fully functional R2 unit. Well, not fully functional, but realistic, functioning, not necessarily an actual droid, but you know what I mean. Had lights and wheels and all kinds of stuff. But he did tell me a story that one time Adam Savage showed up and joined in the fun and made an R2 unit in like 2 days that was absolutely perfect because the man is such a beast when it comes to making things. I believe that's the story he told me. It's probably true. Seems true. I know I was watching one of Adam Savage's web episodes of his YouTube channel. He had an R2-D2 sitting in the background, hanging out. So, seems plausible. Mythbusters joke there for you. I got a message on Twitch that says, "What's up, man? What do you think about the situation in Ukraine? You've been in prison?" No, I have not been in prison. What do I think about the situation in Ukraine? I think it's not good. That's as far as I'm going to go on that. Because I'm not making this into a political thing. We can talk about the politics of bees, on the other hand. Okay, so that's kind of cool. I mean, a little projection there made things a bit easier. I think we can build this up a little bit. Maybe get the go down to a lower subdivision level. Smooth this out. Okay. Yeah, working with this scan data, it's like light years beyond what I've been doing in the past. It's good to struggle through creating an insect just on illustrations, but it is not easy. Even with the scan data, stuff like the wing muscles are going to be really tough. Now I can go down here and continue this line with a little bit more confidence. That's what it's all about. You can see that this is more of a plane shift than an actual suture, I think. So I'm going to go in here and fill this in a little bit. Okay, and we have this. We have this down here. So let's do this. Let's save this. The reason that I was using Smart Resim before was I was using the ZProject brush, and when you use the ZProject brush, here I'll demonstrate when this finishes saving. When you use the ZProject brush, you're basically, you want to go perpendicular to the screen with your brush stroke. So if you have symmetry on, this side might be fine, but the other side's going to get all screwed up. So I could have done a mirror and weld as opposed to Smart Resim, but the reason I did Smart Resim is I didn't want to mess up any of my levels of subdivision. So with Smart Resim, you don't have to delete levels of subdivision or redo a ZRemesh or anything like that. It's just one of the many ways to deal with symmetry issues. So let's play with it a little bit. So I'm going to turn off solo, and maybe I'll go down here to kind of this area right here. And so I'm going to use the other thing you could do, the other thing I did is, as opposed to using the Z project brush, is I just painted a mask right here and then did project all, and that way you can leave symmetry on. You know, it's just different approaches. But just for the sake of argument, let's go to Z project and turn off symmetry. And just do a quick paint right here. And with the Z project brush, it's kind of nice to be able to dial this in. You just don't want to go too crazy with it and start painting everywhere. So I'm holding the Alt key to bring the surface up a little bit. I think I don't need to do that. Okay, and then let's go in here, clay tubes, and clean that up. So you can see it's not symmetrical right now. So we'll go in here and clean this up. Another live stream that I would highly recommend is my friends Jared Kuchevsky and Matt Millard do Creature Corner through the Gnomon Workshop. I think they do it I think it was last night, Wednesday nights, maybe sometimes Tuesday nights. That's a cool one to watch. The both of them get on there. The other night, one of them was doing ZBrush, the other was doing Photoshop. So it was a lot of fun to hang out with them and see some other notables like Ashley Adams hanging out there. Hopefully I haven't invented too much here. probably overdid it right here, but that's okay. Okay. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the way that Smart Resim works, it's in the Deformations tab. It's been around part of ZBrush for a long time. And if you go down to Deformations, it's right here. Whoops, it's right here. So you want to set the axis. So this is symmetrical across the y-axis because I was an idiot and that's the way I set it up. But if I just hit the button, what it's going to do is look at both sides across that axis and kind of average out the symmetry. So let's do this on a lower subdivision level just really quickly. So if I just do Smart Resim like this, it kind of averages out the symmetry and we get the best of both worlds. I'm going to undo that, and instead I'm going to draw a mask on the side that is right that I want to project to the other side. So if you, by doing the mask, now instead of averaging it, it's just going to look at this side and make it symmetrical, this side symmetrical as much as it can. If it can't find perfect symmetry, you'll get a little message up here. So this is why sometimes what I'll do is I'll go to a lower subdivision level, do it, go up one step, do it again, and then another step, and do it again. And it works pretty well. Now I can turn on symmetry and go back to sculpting, feeling somewhat confident that my model is symmetrical. Let's do this. Let's go back to my scan data. Shift S and then thorax. There we go. So I have a good idea what's going on here. The details are just so cool, man. Anybody out there tried sculpting in virtual reality? I tried it a couple times. My arms got tired. Also, I can't drink a beer when I have those goggles on. End up missing my mouth. I don't know if virtual reality just has not caught on like everybody's. I mean, considering how much money companies have poured into it, it has not caught on like people thought it would. I mean, how many people have a VR headset that's collecting dust? I know I had a Vive, which has since been an older version of the Vive, and that's long gone. I think that ended up in recycling, electronic recycling. I have an Oculus that sits in the corner of my room collecting dust. I haven't plugged it in. I did use it on this machine. It was the Oculus that you actually plug in the machine. I swear the Oculus software messed up my computer. It's never been the same. I uninstalled it, did everything I could to get rid of it. It's like a freaking virus. I should have known something associated with Mark Zuckerberg installing on your computer is going to be loads and loads of issues. And then my brother-in-law sold me his Meta 2 headset, which I'm looking at right now, and I don't think I've charged it in 6 weeks. Anybody out there using VR like all the time? Is it ever really going to catch on? I don't know. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap this up in a few minutes here. Go have some dinner. But I got some progress on here. I mean, I'm fiddling with details, which is what I do. That's what I do in this live stream. It's not fast, but hopefully it is fun, and hopefully the bees are not furious. Take a look at what we've done so far. We haven't gotten very far. Well, we got some nice details going on in thorax. There's our bee so far. Super adorable. It looks like I have some extra scan data in there. I'm probably going to clean up this file a little bit. That's why it's so big. Cool. Really cool documentaries in VR with David Attenborough, an interactive tree of life kind of thing. Never got through the chance of... okay. I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds interesting. I worked on a, not that, but a long time ago, there was, Italian university was trying to do sort of a VR exploration of a tree as an entire ecosystem. Here, I'll show some of the models I worked on for that because they were kind of cool. At least I think so. I never saw the finished product. I think it was a bit on the primitive side, but I did some bugs for it. and it was kind of fun. Let's see. Okay, so this is a pseudo scorpion model that I created. And this is nice because this is actually pretty low poly, and it's rendered in, I see so it's not really a very high poly model, but the textures came out pretty nice. So that was a pseudo scorpion that I did, and these renders are Keyshot, I think. No, these are rendered in Substance Painter actually. And then there's this one which I thought came out really nice, because this is actually what the model looks like also this is rendered in Substance. So it's a katydid model, and it's actually pretty low poly as well, considering. So it's mostly textures. I mean, ZBrush in the final version, it's pretty low polygon. So it came out pretty well. And there were some other models I did for that project, I think. I don't know if I have them in here in my portfolio. But it was a cool project, but I never saw the finished version of it. But it definitely, I don't think it was a level of the Adborough VR thing that you're talking about. The AR thing that I did a while back was also kind of cool. I didn't do the animation, but I did the model. It's this right here. This was the actual, what it looks like in the AR experience. So this is for Alexander McQueen, the fashion design company. So these were kind of cool. So I made the model, and then somebody else rigged and animated and set it up in VR. AR. Pretty nifty. That model, I don't think the underside of this is modeled at all. I think it's completely blank on the bottom, because I ran out of time, or it just wasn't needed, you know. But that was kind of fun. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off for tonight. Thank you for joining me. And I will see you guys next time. And I hope you guys have a good week. Oh, I can't believe somebody's actually talking about the tree one, huh? That's cool. I guess I need to look and see how it came out, if they actually finished it or not. All right, guys. See you next week.